If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 21, True Purpose. I stopped by the Blue Pharmacy on the way back to the church and dropped off the empty vials while grabbing some more potions for the next day, including a few extras for when I was practicing my technique making bone figurines. Once I got back to the church, I got started doing precisely that, since my energy was full and I didn't want the bones to start rotting. To prevent that, I actually fused and refined all the bones together at once into an orb the size of a basketball that lacked anything capable of rotting. From there I downed a potion and got to work turning the bigger orb into about 30 smaller orbs that had flaws still, since I was trying to be as efficient as possible. A thing I learned about my technique was that if I gave it a vague order like regrow the arm, it would use my own understanding of what exactly that meant as a base to accomplish it, and thus I could regrow an arm with a seemingly low amount of energy. In the same way, however, if I tried to make the order complex like grow out the bones, then the muscles, veins and skin, the cost would grow to massive proportions. This was why it took me such a large amount of energy to add all the artistic details to my figurines. I was making incredibly precise orders that as a result cost me inefficiency. It was not about the amount of energy I was using when I crafted the figurines, but rather the level of fine detail I was adding in exchange. For this reason I was able to turn all of these orbs into vaguely fairy-like images for about a quarter of my energy each, but that lacked any individualistic features or fine details. I needed to drink another potion before Hestia came home in order to complete a figurine that this time had butterfly wings and Amazonas features and clothes. It was honestly the easiest design to make, considering that most Amazonas are damn near exhibitionists that wear next to nothing. Thanks to that, I doubt there is a male in Orario who can't vividly imagine their features. When my goddess finally did show up, she was pleased to report she had sold the other figurine for 11,000 valis, this time though to a different person. Oh right, the butcher wanted me to let you know that he doesn't mind trading the bones for a figurine since his wife wants one. Hestia said with a smile. I see. I already ate dinner and brought you some food from the place I ate, I said, pointing at the takeout bag sitting on the table. Unsurprisingly, Hestia was absolutely thrilled with the food, but I couldn't really blame her since we have been living on what she brought home from work all month. I think I should get an update today to see if my trip to the dungeon improved my stats by a lot or very little, I said after she was done eating, and she agreed. Like usual, she straddled my back and dripped a drop of her blood on my back, which sent up a bright light show as my fauna updated. Unlike usual, however, I felt the drop of liquid in my mind vanish in the process, but Hestia didn't seem to notice anything off. She finished up the process and copied my status on a sheet of paper before letting me up so I can take a look at it. Name, Alexander Drake. Race, human. Level 1. Strength 256, G-320, F. Endurance 312, F-402, E. Agility 221, G-295, G. Dexterity 201, G-276, G. Magic 627, C-814, A. Spells, Hell's Forge. Innate technique can use anything from a living being and reshape or refine it per one's will. Incantation, Hell's Forge. Skills, Heavenly Restriction. In exchange for the ability to wield mana and magic, one gains access to cursed energy and cursed techniques. All of my stats took a large jump forward based on how much I used them today, and I realized exactly what I absorbed through my tattoos, Excelia. Or at the very least, updating my fauna used the stuff in place of Excelia to improve my stats based on my efforts, but much more than I actually put in the work for. It wasn't an unreasonable amount of increase though, so I will at most grow abnormally fast, but not enough to draw concern. Still, the fact my magic stat had hit A rank meant I was soon going to find out for sure whether S really was the limit or not. Goodness! Your stats exploded after only a single trip to the dungeon. At this rate you might level up before the end of the month, Hestia said excitedly and full of pride. I just nodded but didn't tell her that I wasn't planning on leveling up before I felt like there was no more progress to be made at this level. The higher my stats were at this level, the better my foundation for godhood would be, so I didn't want to improve my vessel by leveling up until I couldn't refine that foundation anymore. Nothing short of the absolute limit of what my vessel was capable of was acceptable. After that I refined the sword I got earlier a bit before calling it a night and heading to bed. The next day Hestia took my newest figurine and went to work while I headed to the hostess of fertility before going to the dungeon. In the bar and restaurant, Mamma Mia thankfully kept me away from the girls who worked there as I improved the ingredients before handing me 3,000 valis and sending me on my way. Seer had shyly given me a boxed lunch she made as well, which I thanked her for politely before leaving. Her cooking was terrible, I found out. Too much salt and some stuff was burnt to the degree I had to use my technique just to fix the whole meal. Still, it was better than nothing at all, so I didn't mind it all that much. The first floor of the dungeon was the same as yesterday in that it was a strangely cave-like place that had supernatural lighting. The green-skinned goblins, like always, were stupid and murder-happy, leaping at any adventurer they come across. I myself had the vicious little bastards figured out and was able to calmly face one without any issue after finding one. That was the trick though, finding one. Unlike some sort of F***ing video game, the low-level creatures were not in fact everywhere but actually took some luck or time looking to come across. I was sort of tempted to try and piss off the dungeon to make things easy on me by getting a group to show up, but something told me that at some point the dungeon would either stop reacting or send something that could actually kill me. Neither option felt like one worth looking forward to, so I chose to leave it be and hustle like every other adventurer. Chapter 22, Contemplations and Solemn Lesson. As I walked through the dungeon in search of goblins to desensitize myself to killing on, I pondered the nature of monsters. Nobody actually knew all that much about them beyond how they tend to be after they spawn. Like how exactly the dungeon spawns them, why they have magic stones, or why they go poof when you damage or remove said magic stone despite being very much solid flesh and blood things. All these questions went entirely unanswered, and from what I can tell nobody even bothered to try and answer them. What gave me a clue to them, however, was the fact that after a monster goes poof, my tattoos absorb the smoke. To most people my tattoos are just decoration, but I know for a fact that they are the physical representation of my innate technique. The fact that the smoke is absorbed by my tattoos means that monsters might in fact be this world's version of cursed spirits, and by killing them my cursed technique takes the special form of energy that comprises their bodies as fuel for my growth. That was my theory anyway, and might be wrong, but also raised a concerning question about myself if true. Was I really human? My fauna said so, and so did everyone around me. But if that was true, why was my body alone compatible with the energy that comprised a monster's body if they are indeed this world's type of cursed spirit? Is it just coincidence because of my technique, or is there something more to it? I thought about this until I finally came across a goblin. It looked the same as all the others and had a wooden club as it noticed me and charged screaming wildly. As an experiment I covered my fist in cursed energy and, dodging the overhead strike of the goblin, decked it as hard as I could in the face. Nothing strange happened though. It was a normal punch with a normal effect of breaking the nose and sending the goblin sprawling. So it isn't just a matter of cursed energy then, but something else as well. But what? I thought as I walked up to the goblin, struggling to get past the damage to its head. Dropping my knees on its arms to hold it down, I ignored its violent struggles and placed my palm flat against its chest before sending cursed energy to it. At first nothing happened, but eventually the goblin started screaming in pain, and I saw that it was faint, but a bit of charring was starting to appear on the part of the goblin I was pressing down on. So my cursed energy was traces of fire in it. Perhaps I can refine this into actual fire then. I thought, and gave it a go by picturing a violent flame as I willed my cursed energy to take that shape on my hand. It was slow, but the longer I kept up the flow the hotter my cursed energy got, burning the goblin worse and worse before I hit a barrier. My cursed energy simply wasn't getting hotter anymore, not because it couldn't, but because I could feel that something was missing, like a key to what I wanted was not there, and my progress was stopped as a result. It was frustrating. I felt something similar when I went over my limit on cursed energy after drinking that undiluted potion. Oh, I see. I need something to inspire me, something that gives my cursed energy an edge for the briefest moment. I almost forgot that cursed users need stimulation from danger to grow rapidly. I thought, quite happy with my discovery and realization. So happy in fact that I drew my weapon and put the goblin out of its misery by bashing its head in. I retrieved the stone and felt the smoke get sucked into my tattoos. Perhaps I didn't get an answer about what monsters were or why I could absorb their discorporate forms to grow stronger, but I did make an important discovery nonetheless. Learning that I might be able to turn my cursed energy into flame was a very valuable thing indeed. I moved on from there, looking for the next goblin to hone myself on. It took me a good 15 minutes, but I did find a goblin, though not in the best way, as it was beating a dead adventurer's body with its club. Looking at the clothes of the body, it was all too easy to understand what had happened. This was a hopeful young man who underestimated the danger of the dungeon even on the first floor, and it cost him everything. The continued desecration of the body, however, pissed me off. I get that monsters kill people, and I can even understand that monsters don't have any moral code and act instinctively, but this just enraged me. In my anger I charged the goblin that paused mid-swing at the body to look at me just in time for my weapon's hammer side to smash into its face at full force. Crack! The impact reverberated through the air as the skull of the goblin burst apart from the sheer force of the blow pressing against its side. I didn't care about the gore and placed my hand on the adventurer's body. Hell's Forge. I spoke the incantation and black and blue flames sprung to life on the body as it began to turn to ash and vanish. I can't take you out of here, but I can at least make sure your body won't be brutalized anymore, I said firmly as I cremated the body on the spot. Amongst the remains was a small dagger with a familia crest on the handle that I put in my bag to return to the adventurer's familia. I harvested the goblin coldly before moving on with a firm lesson on not getting too full of myself lest I end up like that young man. I ended up getting 5 more goblins, with all of them giving me about 12 teeth thanks to my technique once I remembered to apply it. I left the dungeon and saw that a goddess that looked like a palom was asking about if anyone had seen her child. "Is this your crest?" I asked gently after presenting the goddess with the dagger. The goddess looked at the blade and tears filled her eyes as she shakily reached out to take it. "Did he suffer much?" she asked with a sob. "I do not know, as I came upon him after he was killed. The goblin responsible was desecrating the body, so I killed it and cremated the remains to prevent another from doing so after I left. That dagger was the only clue I had to the familia that the adventurer belonged to. I am sorry for your loss," I said respectfully. Chapter 23, New Friend. The goddess thanked me for my actions before leaving to grieve more privately, and I just watched her go. "Wipe that look off your face, lad. You've done what was good and proper and should be proud of it," a gruff voice said as I felt a heavy hand pat me on the back. Looking at the source of the voice, I found a dark-skinned dwarf man with heavy armor and a wide-toothy grin. "Hraldar, Ogan Familia." The dwarf introduced himself while holding out a hand. "Alexander Drake, Hestia Familia, but I go by Alex," I said, shaking the hand. It was rough and calloused, but Hraldar clearly held back his strength since the shake was firm but not harsh. "Well met, Alex. It is good to find that this city has upcoming adventurers who've got their heart in the right place. Nothing wrong with a bit of glory or wealth, but those should always come after what is right," Hraldar said with a smile. "How'd you know I was an upcoming adventurer?" I asked curiously. "Your gear, lad, no offense, but it's sorely lacking for anything other than the first few floors. Not to mention how you acted with that goddess there, a vet would be calmer. It's a sad thing to come across, but anyone who's been at this long enough has been in the same spot once or twice. Now let's get you to the guild to turn in your loot. Good deeds rarely keep the belly filled by themselves, he said with a smile, and we headed over to the guild. When we were done, Hraldar was looking at me oddly as I walked out of the guild with a total of 3,700 valis more than I walked in with. "Be honest with me, lad, you got a skill that increases drop rate for you? It's not unheard of, but it's not exact common either," Hraldar asked curiously. I shook my head. "Nah, I've got no skill like that," I said honestly. "I should probably start holding back some of the drops I harvest to prevent suspicions from building," I thought seriously. "Must've just been real lucky then to get so many teeth. Most goblins only drop 3 or 4 if any at all," Hraldar said, not doubting me at all. "I don't know, maybe it's my just deserts after the shit luck I had yesterday," I joked, and he raised an eyebrow. "I delved for the first time yesterday, and I shit you not, I came across a variant goblin that looked like it had just evolved. Some asshole was probably killing goblins on their way further down and left the stones behind. Anyways, this goblin was as tall as me and had this pale skin with red eyes and long fangs." I told my tale with great enthusiasm, leaving out how I killed it since that would reveal my technique. "You're right, that is some shit luck. From the sounds of it though, that variant was a fresh one, so you might be onto something with that idea. Someone killed the goblins on the way down and didn't grab the stones. Guild will slap a hefty fine on anyone reported doing it more than once, but there's always a few who do it anyways. Bunch of selfish fools in my opinion," Hraldar said, spitting on the ground in disdain. "Alex, please come in and have a seat," Seer said with a smile as we arrived at the hostess. "Not today, I'm afraid, gotta save up, you see. I just came to drop off the container for the meal you made me is all." A bit of advice from someone who's had to learn how to cook before: taste the food you are cooking before and after adding salt or seasonings. It'll help you determine if you need more or it's just fine as is," I said while handing over the lunch container with a smile. Seer seemed to deflate when I said I wasn't going to stay, but paid close attention to the advice I gave her and told me she'd remember it for the future. "Shame you'll not be staying, Alex, would have loved to share a pint as we got to chattin'," Hraldar said with a grin before wishing me well and heading into the restaurant himself. I on the other hand went to the blue pharmacy to drop off my empty vials and replace the potions for tomorrow and my practice at the church. Once I got back to the church I wasted no time at all grabbing one of my undetailed figurines and began to shape it and form the fine stuff. This one was a palm-based fairy with long smooth hair and dragonfly wings holding a pair of small curved blades in an attacking pose. The wings were the trickiest part as a dragonfly's wings have a lot of small details to them. I was getting good at this process and was quickly starting to become more efficient with my energy usage as I worked. Surprisingly, I only needed a single potion to complete the figurine this time and even had a little cursed energy to spare. The potions were getting less and less effective, however, as my reserve grew to match my magic stat at every moment in a slow but continuous process. If the growth followed the same speed as my previous updates, the growth would reach my current status in another 3 days or so. Still, I had another potion set aside for practice and waited for my reserve to refill before downing the potion and working on refining the sword I got from the variant, as the material was surprisingly hard to refine. So far I had gotten the rust off of it and had barely improved the blade's hardness and durability. Don't get me wrong though, the blade put any steel weapon in this city to shame by quite a lot. I was tempted to transform the thing into my own weapon type or at least fuse the metal into my weapon, but that felt wasteful to me for some reason. I couldn't even begin to tell you why, but it was just a gut feeling I had and I tended to listen to those. So here I was instead making the already good blade even more exceptional by burning through my cursed energy like rocket fuel. The design of the sword wasn't anything special, but a single glance at the thing was enough to tell anyone that it was far beyond normal blades. I wonder if I could add a cursed attribute to the thing and turn it into a cursed tool. I had this sudden thought and it consumed my mind. What makes a cursed tool a cursed tool? Is it just the ability to house cursed energy on its own, or does it need a technique or restriction carved into it? I pondered seriously as I closed my eyes and let my cursed energy flow along the blade and try to penetrate it. Chapter 24, Crafting Stuff. My mind sort of fogged out at this point as I focused entirely on the blade and my cursed energy flowing along it. Yet much like when I tried to turn my energy to flame earlier, something was missing and I couldn't push the energy into the blade more than just a little. Opening my eyes with a frustrated sigh, I felt like swearing that the cursed energy was unfairly difficult to use. Left with no way forward at the moment, I set the blade aside and grabbed another oddity I possessed, the variant skull. I knew that variants had guaranteed unique drops upon being killed, but it was never the same. Not only that, but it was very rarely worth making the things artificially, as if you had the strength to do so you were also probably too powerful for whatever drop came from the variant, unless it was a very specific type of monster or one from the deeper floors. For example, let's say a level 5 wanted to get a powerful healing type item but couldn't afford to commission one from a deep floor unicorn. Yes, those were real here, for whatever reason. That same level 5 could in theory find something really weak like say an Almiraj, red-eyed horned white rabbit of fluffy death, and then force-feed it a damn near lethal amount of healing potions or ingredients before stuffing magic stones down its throat. If they are lucky, the thing will evolve in the direction they want due to the healing potions as a catalyst. Then it is merely a matter of force-feeding the thing magic stones until it reaches level 5 or 6 in terms of power and healing potency before killing it and hoping its drop has the properties you want. As should be clear, however, this is a very time and resource intensive project and also a huge risk, as not only is it highly illegal, but you may not get a drop item with the properties you want at the end if you do take this route. In addition, the drop will also be weaker than a naturally more powerful monster such as a unicorn. All in all, unless the monster is by itself extremely rare or valuable, then artificially creating a variant monster is not worth it. What I mean to say with all this information was that this skull was either very good for me or totally useless, and I had no clue which it was. Obviously I could refine the thing, but again the question of whether that was worth doing popped up. According to the Artemis Familia, a good smith could take one look at a drop and tell if it was worth something or not, but I was neither a smith or a praiser. I was just a dude with a really useful curse technique and a newbie adventurer. Unfortunately, my gut was silent on the matter with the skull, so here I was staring at the skull like this was Hamlet. Honestly, the only thing of note as far as I could tell was the hardness of the thing. That and how f***ing sharp the teeth were after I sliced my finger open on one of the things after barely touching it. The skull, surprisingly enough, was totally fine after I hit it with my hammer to test its durability. In fact, there wasn't a scratch on it, which of course led to the current moment where Hestia walked into the room to see me about to cleave the skull with the sword. I know this looks bad, but I promise I have a logical explanation, I said after seeing her shocked expression. What could possibly make this make sense? She asked, disbelieving me. Well, this skull is a drop item and I am testing its durability. If it's good enough, I am thinking about turning it into some armor, I said, trying to sound convincing. She looked suspicious but told me to continue as I was, and with a might swing I achieved nothing besides losing my grip on the handle of the blade because of my poor form on impact. Luckily I did hit the skull and found that even still it didn't have any marks on it at all. I couldn't help but grin when I saw this, since this meant the thing would in fact make a good piece of armor. The trick was I had to figure out what sort of armor to turn it into, as it was not very big and thus a few options were totally out. After a bit of internal debate I chose to turn it into a set of bracers. There was just enough material for me to barely make it work to cover my forearms, and as an added bonus I could take the teeth and fuse them into the axe side of my weapon to make it stupid sharp. Obvious I wasn't going to do all this now, but later when I have enough energy to do so. Still I told Hestia my plan and she approved of me getting armor since it would help me stay alive in the dungeon. We ate and I told her about my day while she mentioned that the butcher's wife liked the figurine she got. After that we went to sleep since we were both rather tired otherwise. The next morning I got up and after stretching set off for the dungeon. I stopped by the hostess and enriched the ingredients again for another 3000 valis. Seer once again gave me a meal she made for me while telling me that she remembered my advice and it helped a whole bunch. Dungeon Square was active as always when I got there, but to my surprise Hraldar was waiting for me near the dungeon entrance. He had on his armor and surprisingly had a god with him as well. The god was a tall man with dark skin and a mostly bald head, with the exceptions being 5 short beaded dreadlocks at the back of his head. The god's clothes were a simple open-chested sleeveless vest and shorts that showed off his muscular body. "Morning, Alex. I hope you don't mind, but after I told Ogun about you yesterday he wanted to meet you personally," Hraldar said with a smile as I walked up. "Alexander Drake, he only said good things, I hope," I said, holding out my hand to shake the god's hand. "Ogun, and yes, he spoke positively of you. It is rare he takes a shine to someone, so I make a point of meeting those he does." The god spoke calmly as he shook my hand, but I could feel the power in that grip. This was no soft god but a warrior in his own right. Chapter 25, Chat and Lessons. A good habit to have. Makes networking easier, I imagine, I said, and Ogun nodded. "We are not a large familia and like to only associate with like-minded people. For example, I recall that Hraldar said your goddess was Hestia, correct?" Ogun asked and I nodded. "In truth I am the first and only member of the familia at the moment, and we are still getting a firm foot under us," I said honestly. The god smiled. "I know of Hestia from my time in heaven but haven't met her personally, though what I heard of her speaks well. As for getting a foot under you, Hraldar has asked permission to help in this regard." Lad. "I noticed your weapon yesterday and figured I might be able to give some help on using it since I use a heavy weapon myself with my axe here," Hraldar said, showing me his battle axe that was quite heavy looking indeed. "The help would be appreciated since I have been winging it with this thing after I designed it," I said with a smile. "Really? I admit the weapon had me a bit confused at first. How's it work roughly?" Hraldar asked, and Ogun also looked interested. "The blunt end here is for anything that a cutting edge might struggle with, and the wedge side here works in about the same way as your axe head does. I know that most weapons like this would have a longer handle, but I wanted something that wasn't so unwieldy in tight spaces," I explained proudly. "Sounds like a versatile weapon, lots of utility. Mind if I give it a few swings?" Hraldar asked, and I handed my weapon over. He stepped back a bit and gave the weapon a few swings in various stances using both the hammer side and axe wedge side. Unlike me, he clearly knew what he was doing, and the weapon certainly moved exactly how I imagined it would in the hands of someone with a higher level. Once he was done, Hraldar smiled and nodded at the weapon in approval before walking over and handing it back. "The potential for the thing is limitless so long as you can deal with the weight playing hell on your wrist and shoulder. I imagine as you level up you'll be upgrading to better materials and greater weight, right?" he asked, and I nodded. "Was thinking Goliath teeth for the next version. A bit expensive to buy from the market, but I think well worth it," I said with a smile. "Ha! You sound like those smiths in the Hephaestus familia," Hraldar said with a chuckle. "I'll take that as a compliment since I am a craftsman myself, though a bit different than those lot, I believe," I said, pleased. "A craftsman not affiliated with a crafting familia? That's quite a rarity. Are you any good?" Ogun asked, surprised. "Depends on the situation, but so long as drops are involved and you don't want added effects, I guarantee that my work is the best in the city." "Sounds arrogant, I know, but I am willing to let you compare any of my works to any other level 1 smiths and prove my claim," I said proudly. "You truly seem to believe what you say, which is the only reason I am not dismissing your claims as rubbish. That said, the world is a wide place and it is never good to claim to be the best at anything lest luck conspire to prove you wrong. Give me a few days and I'll put forth a test to see if your claims are true." Ogun said wisely, and I agreed since I was quite confident. After that Ogun left and Hraldar spoke up. Let's head into the dungeon so I can show you a thing or two about how you might use that piece there. He said with a grin, and I followed behind him. We didn't go far, only the first floor where we found a goblin so Hraldar could see how I used my weapon first. I didn't have any issue dispatching the goblin, and my companion looked on with a serious expression. You've got the makings of a good style going, but you are ignoring a part of what makes that weapon special, its nimbleness. You are using it exclusively like it was a normal battle hammer or axe, but it's not with a handle that's short. You might try and use the thing to parry since it's nimble enough and's got the heft to redirect and blow. Let's find another goblin so I can show you what I mean. He said, and I agreed. We searched for another 30 minutes seriously before we found another goblin, and Hraldar borrowed my weapon to demonstrate what he was talking about. The goblin had a spear and went to stab at Hraldar, but he moved his right hand that was holding the weapon in such a way that the spear was thrown to the side as it slid across the hammer face, missing him completely before the blunt head accelerated right into the goblin's face. I was excited to see this, as it proved that my weapon was usable in various ways that even I hadn't thought of. Now we need to find another goblin so you can give it a go. Other than that, you only really need experience and to work on your stance a bit to be set from here on. Hraldar said honestly. What's wrong with my stance? I asked, confused, since I had copied a standard foot placement from all the martial arts movies I saw on Earth. Not a thing if you used a spear or halberd where being rooted in place was a good thing. That weapon is not the sort that gains anything from you sitting still though, it's a fluid thing meant for hitting while on the move. Don't get me wrong lad, it's a perfectly usable stance when you need to stand your ground, but for what you want to accomplish it's rubbish. Bend the knees like this, no, a bit higher. Hraldar said as he began to show me a better stance to take. The final result felt awkward, but I had to admit it was certainly much more fluid than what I was doing before. Hraldar made it clear though that this was a stance purely for combat, as otherwise there was no point in using it. After that we went on to hunt another 4 goblins before calling it a day, and Hraldar didn't even want any of the stones or couple teeth that dropped naturally since I wasn't willing to use my technique while there was an audience. Not to say I didn't trust Hraldar, as he had plenty of opportunities to backstab me while we were down here already, but had been nothing but helpful and even taught me willingly, but I knew that my technique was really valuable. Chapter 26, Belcranal. And I don't mean in the way he originally thought, where I simply got more drops. While that was certainly a factor, but my cursed technique was a veritable treasure trove because of the sheer versatility of what I had discovered it capable of through trial and error. Healing, drops, item creation, ingredient improvement, combat application, and who knew how many other things it was capable of make it damn near an omni-tool for any need one might have. Something like this simply didn't exist, it was unique to me alone, and that was dangerous to share with others. If you are wondering about the whole hostess of fertility thing, I made sure that they only knew a single facet of my technique, which was my ability to enhance ingredients. Skills and spells that could do that did exist already and weren't all that uncommon either for crafters that didn't delve more than absolutely necessary. But for a new and small familia like mine that didn't have anyone over level 1, exposing my technique would only cause the gods to declare a war game to snatch me to their roster. Anyways, after that trip I only got a bit over 1,000 valis and headed home after turning the food container back over to Seer and giving her some more advice, like how to make boiled soy eggs, which happened to be a favorite of mine. It was literally just boiling eggs and then soaking the deshelled eggs in soy marinade overnight. They were a quick and easy food that tasted amazing in my opinion. After that I hit up the blue pharmacy to restock and trade out potion vials before finally making to the church. Rather than work on another figurine though, I instead grabbed the variant skull and began to refine it. The thing resisted me every step of the way because of its stupidly high durability, but by the time Hestia came home the grey hard skull had turned black and had a sinister gleam to it. 3F*** potions were the price I paid to refine the damn thing to this degree, and I could tell instinctually that this was the best I can do at the moment. All that was left was to separate the teeth from the skull before transforming the skull into bracers. I was confused when Hestia came home, as she was not alone but had a scrawny white-haired boy with her. A new member already? Thought I'd need to get to level 2 or higher before we started getting any. I said casually as she brought the boy down to the room. Tomu. I bumped into him on the way back from work, and it turned out he was looking for a familia. She said, puffing out her chest proudly. Well, if the goddess says you're in, then you're in. Welcome to the family, kid. I said with a smile. Thank you for having me. The boy said loudly and nervously. What's your name, kid? Mine's Alexander Drake, but I go by Alex. I asked while introducing myself. Belcranal, sir. The boy said stiffly, which made it clear that he wasn't sure how he should act. You can relax, Bell, and drop the stiff attitude. we don't do that here. I said with a smile. Bell slouched with a sigh of relief at that and I motioned him to take a seat on the couch. Now if you would take off your shirt so Hestia can grant you her blessing we can make this official. I said and he paused for a moment before taking off his shirt. Hestia did her thing and soon we had Bell's status sheet to look over. Name, Bell Cranel. Race, human. Level 1. Strength 10, I. Endurance 10, I. Agility 10, I. Dexterity 10, I. Magic 10, I. Spells, none. Skills, none. Nothing special it seems, but that's just fine since it means you are a blank slate and can go any direction you want. I said, patting the boy on the back reassuringly as he looked dejected, not seeing anything special on his status. Bell brightened up at that. You really think so? He asked with hopeful eyes. I smiled. Yeah, not a doubt in my mind that if you put in the work you'll turn out alright in the end. I said honestly. I meant every word too, as the fauna responds to emotions and effort, so no matter how talentless you are, if you are willing to push yourself to constantly improve, you will. After that we all headed to the hostess to blow through 15,000 valis to celebrate Belle joining the family. Seer was acting odd when we were there though, as she was looking between Belle and me with a strange expression. Hestia, as it turned out, was an absolute lightweight when alcohol was involved and needed to be carried home after our small celebration. Once back at the church I told Belle to take the couch as I simply removed my boots and flopped on the bed with Hestia in my arms to save Belle from getting sneak attacked and used as a body pillow by her sometime during the night. It was funny how quickly I gave up on the idea of sleeping alone after moving into the church originally. There was nothing romantic about this whole scenario either, but merely just a thing I had gotten used to after Hestia turned out to be a clingy ninja. No, seriously, the woman somehow got out of the bed, walked over to the couch and then somehow managed to slip under my blanket to lay against my chest, all without waking me up. I am not a heavy sleeper, so unless she was a ninja I had no idea how she pulled it off every single night. Knowing that she was unstoppable in this regard, I chose to spare Belle that experience as the boy was naive and innocent. My sacrifice paid off, as the goddess was right where I left her when I woke up in the morning. Thanks to her being a lightweight, she didn't even have a hangover beyond a slight headache that went away shortly after she woke up. Why can't I come to the dungeon with you though? Belle whined when I stopped him from following me. Because as you are right now, going to the dungeon is a death sentence. Look, just do what I did and raise your physical stats to G rank and then I might take you with me. Trust me on this and you'll thank me later when you do go to the dungeon. In the church there's a sword that should work well to get you familiar with holding a weapon. Use that today and tomorrow I'll spend the day creating a routine to follow in order to raise your stats. The only reason I am not doing that today is that I am pretty sure that I have a friend waiting for me at the dungeon that I need to let know what's going on. I told him seriously. Chapter 27, Deeper. Belle was unhappy with my arrangements but did decide to at least listen to them for now and went back to the church. Once I was sure he wasn't just trying to trick me into leaving so he could follow me, I finally made my way to the dungeon. I was a bit later than usual, but Haraldar didn't seem to mind. Let's go a bit deeper today since these first floor goblins aren't giving you much of a challenge. Fourth floor ought to do, since that's when groups of goblins or kobolds start showing up. He suggested and I couldn't help but agree. I won't say that killing the goblins on the first floor is boring exactly, since if I *ck up I run a risk of serious injury or death. But at the same time there's no challenge in killing these goblins, as I now have higher stats than them in all regards and add on my mind, and it really is time to go deeper. I'm not ready for the newbie killer floors yet though, as war shadows and killer ants are a whole different sort of monster than the dumb goblins. I met my first kobold on the way down to the fourth floor and I was rather disappointed. Kobolds were, for the lack of a better description, dog goblins. What I mean by that is that they were the same size as a normal goblin and had nearly identical stats but had the heads of dogs and fur all over their bodies. Unlike goblins, however, kobolds dropped their hide as well as their fangs as drop items, with the former being used to make leather for low-level armor and the later having the same use as goblin teeth. I wanted to get some hide to use, but with Haraldar with me I couldn't use my technique as I pleased. Eventually though we reached the fourth floor and I noticed that the walls were a mix of two colors instead of the usual bluish color I was used to. This wasn't anything surprising, as the fifth floor to the seventh floor all had light green colored walls from my research on the matter. Alright lad, I've seen that you remember what I showed you yesterday, now it's time push it to its limit. First group we find you'll deal with alone. He said and I nodded. It didn't take long for us to find our first group either, as no more than 5 minutes into looking we discovered a group of 5 monsters, 3 kobolds and 2 goblins with varied equipment and their backs towards us. Hraldar waited at the back as I rushed the group, which drew their attention just in time to see me collapse the skull of the unlucky kobold, bringing up the rear. Gra! R.O B! The monsters screamed their feral battle cries and came at me as I switched into my stance. First up was a goblin with a club that I deflected a strike from before sending my own to dispatch it. Things got tricky after that as the two kobolds and goblin all reached me at the same time and attacked as well. I dodged to the side before throwing a punch straight into the eye of one of the kobolds as I did so, which made it back off while grabbing at the damaged eye. Using that opening, I circled around it as the last kobold and goblin went to stab me with their spears, thus having them dispatch the thing for me. Now there was only two monsters left and I chose aggression to keep them from recovering and possibly rubbing their two brain cells together and figuring out how f***ed they were. Monsters are murderous, sure, but they are also smart enough to run away in fear should it overcome their innate hatred of us adventurers. It tends to be rare though, as there is usually not enough pressure on them to do so, or the adventurer dealing with them is careful not to let them escape. Shortly after that I was taking deep breaths as I had pushed myself a bit to handle this group even if I had avoided getting injured. You got the knack for it now, lad, so I think this'll be the last time I delve with you unless you manage to level up. I've got my own delving to do after all. Hraldar said with a hearty laugh. I appreciate the help either way, so thanks. I said, honestly grateful. Bah, don't worry about it, lad, I'm always happy to help a newbie get their legs under them. He said, waving off my thanks. I ended up fighting 3 more groups, each with no less than 3 monsters and no more than 6 before we called it a day. I had to admit I could understand the appeal of diving deeper and deeper, as while the danger increases so too does the rewards. This one trip earned me 4,050 valis as well as 2 kobold hides that I kept to use for myself. Seer dragged me into the restaurant when I was about to pass by. You never came this morning, she said with an angry pout. Sorry about that, but I was running late due to the newest member of my familia not wanting to stay behind to work on his stats before he went to the dungeon, I said honestly. She had a look of understanding as she calmed down. I suppose I can forgive you just this once, but don't make a habit of it, she said firmly. Wasn't planning on it, but I'll be double sure to keep that in mind from now on. Ooh, maybe I'll write a note that says go see Seer or she'll stomp on your foot, that'll motivate me, I think. I joked, and the grey-haired girl huffed in mock anger. If you're not buying something, go away and let her get back to work. Mamma Mia yelled our way and I hurriedly said my goodbyes before leaving. On the way back to the church I grabbed a bunch of extra potions from the blue pharmacy, and when Neza asked what was going on I explained about Belle and my side projects needed a bunch of energy to complete. She totally understood what I meant and handed over the potions without any problems after that. The whole free mana potion thing we had going on was a great thing in my opinion, as I was burning through these things like a dehydrated man given water. Okay, that was probably a bad description, but you get the idea. Anyways, I made it back to the church and found Belle staring at the sword in awe. Not what you were expecting from it, was it? I asked with a knowing smile. Are all swords this amazing? Belle asked, excited. I laughed. I believe I speak honestly when I say that all low-level adventurers wished that was the case. No, that particular sword is a drop that I got from a variant goblin and refined into what you see there, not very pretty but a better weapon than any level 1 adventurer should have normally, I said proudly. Chapter 28, Boot Camp. Is that why it felt weird to hold? Belle asked, shocked. No, that's because the sword is too big for your scrawny body. Sure, you could use it as it is, but you don't exactly strike me as the sort to use a sword that size. How about I turn it into a short sword and a dagger and you try it out then? I suggested, and he looked confused but nodded. Grabbing the sword I covered it in cursed energy Hell's Forge. I activated my cursed technique. Under Belle's awestruck eyes the sword began to thin as metal flowed like it was alive away from the blade and into my left hand and then into the shape of a Kabar dagger. The work was shoddy though, since I traded precision for general shape transformation. It was an easy fix though, as I downed a potion and waited till I refilled my energy to sharpen and pretty up the blades. I didn't like how they didn't look the same though and changed the sword into a larger, longer version of the Kabar knife. For extra effect I darkened both blades and the final result was 2 dull grey blades with a thick spine and single sharp edge. Try them out, I said, tossing the blades to Belle, who wisely chose to avoid them rather than catch them. He tentatively picked up the dagger with his left hand and then the sword with his right hand and took a few swings with both of them. His form was dreadful though, as his grip was way too tight and his wrist was bent. Not to mention that his stance was non-existent and he had no power behind his swings as a result. I take it you like them then? Those are yours now, since they were wasted in my hands anyways and you'll need a weapon. Before that though, I'm going to beat you into shape so you don't waste my work and die early, I said with a grin. Bell just tilted his head in confusion, but I didn't explain since he would find out tomorrow. Oh, I was going to go all sorts of drill instructor on the poor fellow. I'm talking laps, push-ups, crunches, shadow boxing and maybe even light sparring to get him used to hostile contact. And thanks to the large amount of potions I grabbed, he'll have a nice obstacle course as well. That was magic, right? Bell asked once I finished making a figurine that was an elf, this time in robes with feathered wings. Not exactly, that was my cursed technique, Hell's Forge. I actually can't use magic due to my skill, and instead I have cursed energy, and this is my innate technique. Lets me refine, transform, and shape anything that came from a living source, including something still alive. I am quite happy with it so far, as it has many uses both in and out of combat, but right now my greatest use for it is that I can craft wonderful things with it, like this figurine. Did you know that these things sell for thousands of valis each? Quite the demand for them from what I'm told. I explained proudly. Can I learn how to do that too? Bell asked eagerly. Afraid not, this isn't the sort of thing that can be taught. More likely than not you'll just get a spell of some sort in time. I said honestly. Bell looked sad about it but got over it quick enough and went to messing with his new weapons. Hestia got home and we all ate before going to bed again, though there was a funny conversation where she got all embarrassed about sleeping in the same bed as me, like she didn't wake up every day using me as a body pillow regardless of our previous sleeping arrangements. The next morning Hestia left for her food stall, but Belle and I stayed behind. I used a few potions to turn some nearby broken furniture pieces into obstacles around the church, and then I made Bell run the course until he dropped. I let him rest for a while to catch his breath before making him give me push-ups until he couldn't anymore. Then for the final touch I had him do crunches till it hurt to breath. Fantastic effort, Bell, now pick yourself up and take a stance so we can spar. I said with a smile that must have made me seem like the devil in the boy's eyes. But I hurt all over and my hands are shaking. He complained, but I was having none of that as I popped the cork of a healing potion and stuffed it in his mouth, forcing him to down it. Problem solved, now get up and take a stance. I said, still smiling. Hours later Hestia came home again, only to find Bell passed out and me working on my new bracers that were strapped to my arm with cobalt hide. What happened? She exclaimed in horror as she went to go check on Bell. Nothing to worry about, I just trained him a bit. On a related note, you might want to update him since his endurance likely grew by a lot. I said casually while using my technique to smooth out my bracers and remove the rough edges. The two bracers were simple long dark colored pieces of material that covered my forearms and were held tightly in place with the reshaped and refined cobalt hide I brought from the dungeon yesterday. Getting the rough shape was not all that expensive, but working out the uncomfortable or rough parts took much more energy. I finished them up about the same time Hestia finished updating Bell and just smiled at the dirty look she gave me after she saw the jump in the endurance stat he got, all the way to 57 in one day. Okay, so admittedly I might have gone a little too hard on the kid, but in my defense it was for his own good. To be honest though, Bell had a knack for quick learning as he absorbed what little I could show him like a sponge. Like I had mentioned previously, I did try and learn how to use a sword properly back on Earth, and though I failed, that didn't mean I didn't retain some of that knowledge. It was just the basics though, such as grip and footwork, but for a total amateur like Bell it was perfect. Still, I had already told the boy what his training pattern until he raised his physical stats to G rank would be, and he begrudgingly agreed. It was pretty much just a scaled down version of what I put him through today with the sparring between us in the evenings when I get back from the dungeon. I was even going to be so kind as to grab some killer ant carapaces and cobalt hides to make into armor for him so he would be better prepared when he finally got into the dungeon. Chapter 29, Not Great Luck. Bell slept like a rock after he ate and went to bed, and I had no trouble getting to sleep either. The next morning I got up, stretched and strapped on my new bracers before setting out for the dungeon. I made a brief stop by the hostess to enhance the ingredients and pick up the meal Seer made for me before setting off. It felt the same as usual when I went into the dungeon, as the stone walls were just as bleak and quiet as normal. I didn't even bother testing my new bracers since I knew for a fact that these goblins couldn't even scratch the things. As I went deeper and deeper into the dungeon, I came across 3 goblins and 2 groups of monsters that I separated and killed in a systematic fashion. I made sure to collect a whole lot of cobalt hide using my technique before harvesting the stones and smoke from them. Thanks to not updating recently, I felt like I had 3 drops of whatever that stuff was saved up for my next update, which should be a good chunk of stats at that time. The 4th floor was just like before, with the blue and green walls that got more and more green the closer to the 5th floor you got. I only ran into a single group of monsters there, with it being 3 spear-wielding kobolds and 2 club goblins that apparently didn't understand safety since they rushed ahead right when the spears were stabbing at me. I didn't have to move a muscle to watch 2 of the 5 die to their own side. The final 3 were stupid creatures that I threw cursed energy on, making them panic, thinking they were on fire before crushing their heads before they figured out that was not the case. Monsters didn't start growing brains until the 7th and 8th floors from what I was told, so using trickery like this was way too easy. The 5th floor had a complete recoloring and theme as the rooms got bigger and the hallways shorter while the walls were a light green color. I was cautious as I walked through this area as there were 4 new monsters on these floors that were slightly tricky to deal with. Dungeon lizards were person-sized lizards that hung from the ceilings and dropped down on unsuspecting adventurers. This was obviously not an ideal situation to be in and could very easily lead to death. The second monster was the frog shooters that were again person-sized frogs, but this time there was an unusual detail in that they only had a single eye in the center of their head. This monster attacked by sending their long, fast and sticky tongues at adventurers and trying to eat them whole. I was told it was an slow and gruesome death as the monster chews you while it tries to swallow. The third monster, War Shadows, were vaguely humanoid monsters with the standard 2 arms, legs and single head, but that was where the similarities ended. Their bodies were tall and slender with 3 sharp claws at the end of each hand and their magic stone in the center of their heads on the outside without any other features beyond their black body. Unlike goblins and kobolds, War Shadows were fast and stealthy as their preferred method of attack was ambush. For an adventurer who was not careful enough, this element of surprise proved fatal, which unfortunately meant many newbies fell to them. I thankfully had the foresight to ask about what I would need to deal with in what part of the dungeon and knew to keep an eye to the shadows. The 4th new monster was not all that dangerous on its own, but had the bad habit of calling friends if injured and not killed quickly. Killer ants were basically just red fire ants scaled up to the size of people, and besides the hard carapaces that proved to slow down slashing weapons, they only became hard to handle if you either don't kill them fast enough or get rid of the bodies fast enough. In either of those scenarios they release a pheromone that attracts more of them, and the stronger the presence of the pheromone the more come. To put it simply, they are swarm tactics manifested and need to be dealt with swiftly to prevent getting overrun. My first customer turned out to be a war shadow that I spotted in a dark cubby against the right wall. VVVVVVVV. The monster hummed in anger when it realized that I had spotted it before charging at me, claws extended. The monster was much faster than any goblin or kobold for sure, but I was prepared for this as I deflected the right claws with my left bracer, which made a screeching sound like metal against metal. The left claws were redirected by my weapon as I cleaved the creature's head from its shoulders with the sharp side of it. The body flailed about for a bit like a snake's would before stilling and allowing me to use my technique to make the thing's only drop, its claws, a guaranteed thing. Once that was done, I ripped the stone out of its head, which was an uncomfortable feeling, but I ignored it since it ended the moment the monster's body went poof. Like I expected, I got more smoke for killing this stronger monster and knew that I was probably going to chase after stronger and stronger monsters to get that extra large serving of smoke for my whole career. Grabbing my spoils and putting them in my bag, I carefully move on and frown as I don't find any more monsters for quite a while. It's probably just bad luck. I thought and took out my meal to eat and was pleasantly surprised to find that it was 4 soy eggs and rice with beef in it. I ate quickly while keeping an eye and ear out for any newly spawning monsters, but it was all quiet. I put away the box and no sooner stood up before hearing the sound of heavy footsteps approaching my position. I thought it was probably a frog shooter moving about and stood waiting at the ready, only for a meaty dark hand to grab the frame of the hallway the sound was coming from and pull the rest of its body into view. OF*CKU Murphy. I cursed as the bull-headed minotaur stepped into the room. Minotaurs were 7-foot-tall humanoid monsters with thick skin, bullheads and the ability to wield weapons. They were also level 2 monsters. My insane ass didn't immediately try and book it though in the face of this definitely too strong to fight monster. No, I skipped flight and went straight to fight mode as I took a stance and flared my curse energy as adrenaline pumped through me. Ray-a-a-oo. The minotaur bellowed and our dance of death began to play out. Chapter 30, Enlightenment and Meeting. The minotaur was fast, faster than me at least, as it charged me with its horns down. No doubt intending to eviscerate me with the things, but I leapt to the side and let it crash into the wall behind me. Rock dust filled the air as the charge broke the wall and sent rock and dust into the air. It wasn't enough to obscure the beasts though, as I saw its silhouette through the cloud and stood at the ready for whatever it did next. Unfortunately, I wasn't expecting its next move as it grabbed a stone and lobbed it at me full force. Crack. OOPH. The sound of bones breaking and the air in my lungs getting sent out filled the air as the stone hit me on my right side at the bottom of my ribcage, breaking 2 of them in the process. I fell into a coughing fit that hurt like a mother f***er as my body desperately tried to inhale air. The minotaur drooled and breathed out steam from its nostrils and started walking towards me since it could likely feel my weakness. FCK 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 FCK. I cursed over and over again in my mind trying to find a solution to survive, no to win. I hate losing, I detest it with every fiber of my being and I was desperate to win, to succeed at this point. And my cursed energy responded as I fell into a foggy state of mind. Burn. A simple word escaped my lips like no more than a gentle whisper, then the heat came. Black and blue cursed flames erupted from me as the temperature of room rose by dozens of degrees in an instant. I was working on pure feral instinct at this point as my pain and the surrounds all stopped being relevant. All that mattered was this foe before me. The Minotaur bellowed angrily and ran towards me but failed to reach me as the flames covering my body burned it merely a foot away from me. Its skin bubbled and flesh charred in an instant as the cursed flames as if alive snaked up its arm from that briefest of contact and hungrily gorged itself on the meal it found. I swung my weapon and found purchase on its own ribs as my cursed energy surged in the tiniest moment before impact and the air warped as black lightning sparked. Black flash! I yelled as the Minotaur's ribs broke and it spat out a mouthful of blood as one of them pierced its lung. It all suddenly felt wrong, the stupidly inefficient way I used my energy, the flow of it in my technique and body. I fixed all of that in an instant and the results were immediate. The flames condensed and turned into a demonic black corona an inch away from my body and weapon but multiple times stronger than before as the stone above me and beneath my feet began to glow white hot and melt at a rapid pace. Hell's Forge! I spoke and the cursed energy repaired my broken ribs and damaged insides in an instant. I didn't skip and beat and began to wail on the Minotaur that hadn't recovered from my first black flash, so by the end of my fourth it gave up the ghost, blackened and insides liquefied. I didn't even notice that someone had shown up and blacked out as Mind Zero hit me hard. I may have gotten the enlightenment of Black Flash but I had gone way beyond my limit on power expenditure and once the Minotaur was dead I dropped like a sack of rocks. I have no idea how long I was out for but when I came to I heard two female voices talking. Any idea what sort of heat would do that? There's no way a level 1 could produce such a thing. A mature but young sounding voice said sternly. But the proof is all here that says a level 1 did produce it. And Ace said he was glowing black the whole time, she doesn't lie and you know it. Another younger and more energetic voice argued. He's waking up. A new monotone voice said, silencing the other two temporarily. I groaned as I opened my eyes but was confused to see boobs above me and a blonde-haired girl looking down as well with a weird mix of curiosity and blankness. I tried to sit up but my head throbbed in pain at the movement and I groaned. You have experienced a bad case of Mind Zero and may need a few minutes to be able to move. The mature voice said and my gaze flickered in the direction I heard it come from. There was two people there. A petite short-haired Amazon with a wide grin and a modestly dressed green-haired elf with curiously longer than normal ears. Second time in the last 2 months, this is becoming a bad habit. I said with a chuckle that made my head ache spike for a moment. Hey Ace said you were all glowing black and flamey and stuff, what was that? The eager Amazon asked with overflowing curiosity. Magic and a bad idea obviously. I said while trying to dig through my bag at my waist without looking for a potion. What sort of magic exactly? It's unheard of for a level 1 to have that much firepower. A level 2 rarely but not a level 1. The elf said in a very know-it-all fashion. No idea, I'm not some scholar on the stuff. I said honestly. I couldn't even begin to explain why or how the hell anything I did worked when it involved cursed energy, it just did and that was good enough for me. The elf however didn't look happy with my answer but at least seemed to believe me. I smiled as I finally felt a glass vial with my fingers and fished it out of my bag and brought it close to my mouth and ripped out the cork with my teeth and downed the potion. You could have just asked for a potion if you needed one, we have some spares. The elf said seriously. My headache rapidly retreated as the potion took effect and I winced as I sat up. I have a bad reaction to the normal potions, these are specially made just for me. I explained and she nodded in understanding. I'm Tiona. Tiona Hiriot. The Amazon girl introduced herself with a wide smile as she got all up close and personal. Alexander Drake, I go by Alex though. I said calmly while stretching since I was stiff. I am Riverieljo's elf and that is Ace Wallenstein, she was the one who found you towards the end of your fight with the Minotaur. An apology is owed to you as we got careless and accidentally sent the monster fleeing to the upper floors where it found you. Riveria said and bowed slightly. I assumed as much. The someone scaring it up here part not the you did it part. Speaking of that grilled beef, where is it? I asked looking around and not seeing the corpse. Chapter 31, Chatting. Author note, slight retcon as I meant Tiona this whole time but got the two sisters' names confused, that is all. Ha 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 ha. Grilled beef. That's a good one. Tiona said while laughing. Yes, about the matter of the Minotaur, we took the liberty of harvesting it since we assumed you wouldn't want the dungeon to reclaim it. At that time we discovered that the smoke produced was absorbed into your body. Is this some sort of skill or magic, and if so, can you tell me how it works? Riveria said curiously. Ah, I see. While I can understand your curiosity, that is a private matter. I said seriously. Yes, of course. Please ignore my rudeness, I meant no offense. She said hurriedly to reassure me that she wasn't trying to be rude. The details of one's skills in magic was very much a private piece of information, and asking for them was frowned upon. While some adventurers or gods boast about the details publicly, it was a widely accepted opinion that most of the time it was wrong or purposefully incomplete. By knowing one's skills in magic leaves an adventurer vulnerable to a good degree. For example, if you had a skill that buffed you in a certain circumstance for a certain amount of time before weakening you greatly, someone could wait until you were weak to ambush you. No harm done, so it's fine. But besides the stone, did the Minotaur drop anything else? I asked, glossing over the other matter since it really wasn't a big deal, since she wasn't trying to force the information out of me. Yes, though I don't think it is worth keeping, as the Minotaur dropped its hide, and well, you did quite a number on it. The elf said as Tiona showed me what she meant. Like she said, the hide was charred and had holes in it that truly made it nearly worthless to anyone else. To me though, the thing was perfectly usable as a bit of repair and refinement. Later I could have it better than ever. Yay for having a useful curse technique. I'm sure I can find a use for it somewhere. I said as I took the hide and rolled it up before stuffing it into my bag. The magic stone of the Minotaur was much larger than any I had gotten to date, as it filled my hand and was clearly filled with much more mana. I barely managed to fit it into my bulging bag that was clearly too small to hold any more. Checking my weapon, I sighed as I saw that it was cracked all over and starting to crumble. Looks like black flash was too much for it to handle. I suppose that was to be expected from a simple steel weapon. I thought as I holstered the weapon. Ooh, now there's something interesting. You hit that grilled beef so hard your weapon broke, hey? I used to do that all the time before I got my Urga here. Tiona said while showing off the odd dual-sided greatsword that she wielded. How about you let the Loki Familia pay for you to get a new weapon as an apology for the Minotaur attacking you? Riveria asked sincerely. I shook my head. I was planning to craft an upgraded version anyways, since I am approaching the next level. If you can get me some decent drop materials though, I would appreciate it. I said honestly. You're a craftsman? Ace asked with a confused look that the other two mirrored. Yeah, I know I don't seem the sort, but that is where my specialty lies. Crafted these bracers myself, in fact. I said proudly, showing off my work. Tiona looked at the bracers closely and casually flicked one of them, which produced a loud chime while making my arm snap from the sheer force behind it. Oops. Those are pretty good stuff though, not a crack on them even after that. She said, seemingly more interested in how she hadn't broken my equipment rather than how she had broken my arm. I grit my teeth from the pain and silently used my cursed technique to fix the break slightly. That was the biggest benefit of the enlightenment of the Black Flash. I could use my technique wordlessly now. It would obviously be stronger and more efficient if I did say the incantation, but I didn't need to say it now. Thanks to me using the technique internally, none of them even noticed that I fixed the break already. How bad is the damage? Riveria asked apologetically, since she felt terrible that Tiona's carelessness had caused something like this. Feels like she cracked the bone, but I'll be fine in a day or so. I said honestly. A day? Usually a cracked bone, however slight, would take at least a week to heal. Riveria said, confused. I'm more durable than usual, I suppose. I said with a shrug. The elf looked at me suspiciously but didn't try and argue with me. In the end I told them where they could find me, and we parted ways after they escorted me out of the dungeon on account of me not having a usable weapon and all. Rose actually chastised me for fighting the Minotaur instead of running away when I went to turn in my loot for the day at the guild. I can't say it wasn't worth it though, as the Minotaur's intact stone was worth nearly double my normal daily income of about 3,000 or 4,000 valis. 8,000 valis for that single stone, and the addition of 2,500 from my other slain monsters set me at 10,000 for this one trip alone. The biggest gain though was the liquid I felt inside me, that was nearly an entire cup's worth compared to the 2 or 3 drops I previously had. I was seriously eager to see just how far my stats would jump thanks to this amount of stuff. Hell, it was entirely possible I might max out all my stats if the single drop from my last update was any clue. Anyway, after turning in my loot for money, I stopped by the hostess to drop off the food container and tell Seer that the food was good before heading to the blue pharmacy to turn in my empty vials and get some more potions. I needed them too, as I would be using my technique a lot in the next few days, as I couldn't delve weaponless, or rather I could but wouldn't. On the way home to the church I had already fixed my arm entirely just because the pain was annoying. Bell wasn't slacking off either, as he was practicing with his weapons in front of the church when I walked up. We sparred a bit after that before I took out the drops I kept from the dungeon, including the Minotaur hide, and began to patch and refine them up. The difference in cursed energy expenditure between yesterday at this time and now was night and day. I might as well have been a faucet with an extra hole in it for how much energy I wasted before. Chapter 32, Update. If before it may have taken all of my energy to fix the holes in the Minotaur's hide, it now only took a quarter instead. The reason for this was that I wasn't just throwing cursed energy at the target with a vague will of what I wanted to happen, but infusing my will in the energy in a precise manner before using it, thus getting a much higher efficiency out of the technique. My new favorite thing though was my new cursed flames. They burned black and were highly destructive, with a sort of aliveness to them that reminded me of an attack dog. In my hands the flames were as well behaved as a loving companion, but the moment they touched something that wasn't me they latched on and consumed it relentlessly. I could command the flames to release whatever they got a hold of, which was why the church hadn't been burnt down on accident, but it was very hard. In a way it seemed almost like the flames were reluctant to give up any form of food they found. If nothing else, this just told me that teaming up was out the window entirely when I delved. Could you even imagine what would happen if my own teammate got touched by my flames while we delved? It was simply for the best if I delved alone instead, since I wouldn't need to hold back then. Admittedly this made my future in the dungeon just that much harder, but there was nothing for it really, and I now needed to put in extra effort to keep up and exceed those that needed a team to delve deep. Anyways, by the time Hestia got home I had fixed and refined my entire stock of hides and was in the process of turning them into the flexible parts of armor for Belle. I was shaping 3 fused cobalt hides into a pair of flexible but tough pants when the small goddess entered the room. "Did you do something with your hair? You seem different for some reason," she said while looking me up and down with a confused expression. "Well, I almost died and made a serious breakthrough in my control and use of cursed energy, so maybe that's what you are feeling," I suggested casually, and she freaked out. "What do you mean you almost died?" she exclaimed in shock, and Belle was not much different since I hadn't told him either. "Oh well, some really strong adventurers had apparently gotten a little careless and scared a Minotaur up to floor 5 where I was. I killed it after I broke through with my energy in the heat of the moment, and then I got to meet those adventurers. They were interesting people. Speaking of, do you mind updating me, since I am dying to find out how much my stats grew since my last update?" I asked with a cheeky grin. "You? How dare you play with my feelings like this?" Hestia yelled angrily and began to beat on my chest, but I just wrapped my arms around her tightly. "Relax, it'll take more than death to kill me," I said with a smile. "That's not how that works," she said with an upset huff. "Name, Alexander Drake. Race, human. Level 1+, kin level up. Strength 320, F-745, B. Endurance 402, E-863, A. Agility 295, G-714, B. Dexterity 276, G-697, C. Magic 814, A-999, S-1500, SS-2270, X. Spells, Hell's Forge. Innate technique can use anything from a living being and reshape or refine it per one's will. Incantation, Hell's Forge. Extension, Hellfire. Skills, Heavenly Restriction. In exchange for the ability to wield mana and magic, one gains access to cursed energy and cursed techniques. Blessing of Black. Permanently increases cursed energy efficiency, amount, and control. Magic will always start at G rank after leveling up. "What?" Hestia exclaimed after my update was over. "I knew it," I said with a wide grin as I looked over my new status sheet. I was pleasantly surprised with my new skill that would give me a massive edge anytime I leveled up in the future, since I had assumed the enlightenment of Black Flash to be a single-time thing, but clearly I was mistaken. The biggest thing though was that I finally knew for a fact that S rank wasn't the limit one could achieve. In fact, I had shot to more than twice that supposed limit, to a whopping 2270 in my magic stat dictated as X rank. Incredibly, that didn't even feel like the limit yet, as I had a gut feeling that I could go even further. I was fairly certain that when my body finished adapting to my new stats I would have the magic of a level 2 despite only being level 1. Or I could totally ignore all of the benefits of waiting and level up now, since I apparently qualified for it. F***ck that. I was going to polish the shit out of my stats until I couldn't anymore and only then level up. I had a gut feeling that anything less would force my path to godhood to an abrupt end in the future. I was possibly insane, but I did not do things by half if I had any say in the matter. I wasn't all that surprised to find that my flames had shown up either as an extension of my innate technique, though the name was rather suggestive. Obviously it just made sense that Hell's Forge would operate using hellfire, but what exactly hellfire was might be a bit of a problem. Sure, it could just be a name and not mean anything, but if it was in fact hellfire, then I couldn't go showing it off randomly, or some god was likely to recognize what it was and might throw a huge fit about it. My only gripe with my update was that all the liquid I had collected had been used and I hadn't even hit A rank in all my other stats beyond magic and endurance. Yet I know I was just being petty, but that was the smoke of a level 2 and several level 1 monsters after all. I was thankful to learn that the stuff could let me breeze past the limits that a normal person might struggle with, though. Actually, I suppose it was more along the lines that I didn't breeze past them so much as forced my way through. Thinking about it, that is probably not really a good thing, hey? I mean, most limits exist for a reason, right? So going past them likely comes with some risk to oneself if that was true. As I learned the next day, I was very much correct. Limit breaking came at a cost. To be specific, it came at the cost of what I hatefully refer to as vessel sickness, or basically a flu hyped up to 12 as your vessel struggles to contain power beyond what it should. It was loads of fun, can't you tell? Chapter 33, Down with the Sickness. I'm a tough bastard though, and only had to deal with feeling like death for 3 days before I stabilized again. I sent Belle to the hostess while I was sick to let Seer know what was going on, since I didn't want to deal with that problem when I saw her again. My gut told me that I really didn't want to make her mad, so I tried to keep her neutral with me at the very least in any given instance. I wasn't sure if she was actually just that nice or if she had a thing for me, but either way neutrality was the way to go for me. Yet I was friend-zoning the F***ck out of her, but I really wasn't interested in that sort of thing. On the third day, when I was starting to feel better, Tiona showed up with a whole satchel of drops for me. It was like Christmas, as none of them were below level 2 monsters, and I even got a Goliath's tooth. The Loki Familia was a-okay in my book after this, as they took responsibility and even gave me a bunch of expensive drops to craft my weapon again as an apology. There was a small issue though, with Tiona going nuts after discovering that I was the one who made the bone figurines. The bag of drops was really heavy and I was sick, so she brought it into the room for me, which was when she saw all my unfinished figurines. "Could you make one that looks like me?" "Ooh, what about Ace or Riveria?" she asked excitedly, and I sighed. "I could, but not right now since I am not feeling well, as you can see," I said in a nasally voice as I was sitting on the couch wrapped up in a blanket. "Hey, what about the clothes? Could you make them look like us naked?" she asked with a lewd expression. "First off, bad, no horny. Second, I would need to see what you all look like naked to do that, as otherwise the details would likely be off. In other words, no, I can't, nor would I even if I could, as that is a breach of privacy," I said seriously. I don't mind showing you if you leveled up a few times. Level 4 minimum to try and take me off the market," she said with a playful wink. "I'll keep that in mind. Now if that's all, I'd like to go back to sleep so I can get rid of this illness faster," I said tiredly, and she shrugged before saying goodbye and leaving while swaying her hips intentionally on the way out. Now to embrace the sweet relief of sleep, I thought as I started to nod off, only to hear a new voice from upstairs. "Yo Alex, you here?" I heard Hraldar's voice call out from the large church room above me. Ugh, more guests, I thought bitterly as I hauled my weak body up the stairs to see what Hraldar wanted. "Bloody hell, lad, you look terrible," the dwarf said when he saw me, and I had to force myself to remain polite. "It wasn't planned, believe me." "Anyways, why are you here?" I asked, confused. "My god said he'd set up a trial to see if you are as good a craftsman as you say you are, and he just got it finished. Somehow he convinced Hephaestus herself to compare your work to something from her best level 1 trick, as you both are to make a dagger out of a minotaur's horn, and then she'll compare the two. I'm here to drop off the horn you'll be using," he said with a grin. That whole part of the conversation had totally slipped my mind, what with how eventful my time since then had been. "How long do I have?" I asked, since I was confident in my work to a great degree after getting the enlightenment of Black Flash. 3 days starting tomorrow, and remember, no supplementary ingredients for this test, just this horn," Hraldar said as he handed over the solid brown horn about 7 inches long and 2 inches wide at the base. "Anywhere specifically I should go to drop the blade off after I'm done with it?" I asked, and he shook his head. "Nah, I'll be dropping by in the afternoon to pick it up on the 3rd day. You go get some rest though, as you really do look terrible, lad," he said before leaving, and I was all about doing exactly that. The next day I had a bit of a runny nose still, but otherwise felt fine and got to work on that dagger. It was a simple design really, as I got rid of all the impurities in the horn before transforming it into a Bowie-style blade with a slip guard and spiraled handle for grip. Then I did what would set my blade apart from any other at this level, I refined it. The finished product was so sharp that I could cut through iron like butter, and so durable that nothing I did to it without my cursed energy so much as scratched it, much less chipped the edge. Overboard? Absolutely. Worth it? Definitely. I claim to be the best level 1 craftsman in this city, and I damn well mean it too. Plus, knowing that Hephaestus herself would be comparing the two blades meant I needed to bring my A grade not to be embarrassed. Ironically, I didn't even need the entire 3 days to finish the blade, but only 1. The last 2 days I spent fixing up the church now that I had enough energy to do so, as well as the time for it. Bell had spent the last few days getting used to his new leather armor I made him before my sickness hit. Mostly it was just him working out in it and practicing the little bit I had taught him about how to use his weapons. Still, his improvement was clear to anyone with eyes, and I was thinking about letting him go delving soon even if his stats didn't reach G rank. Sparring with me was great and all, but there was a difference between facing someone you know won't seriously hurt you versus a monster that literally wants to rip you apart. It was a whole mindset thing, and Bell needed to adapt to that as soon as possible. I am quite proud to say that by the time Hraldar came to pick up the dagger, the church had gone a full 180 and looked brand new. It was rather amusing to see the look of confusion on his face as he looked around. I had basically tore out anything that didn't come from a living source other than the glass of the windows and replaced it with hardened refined wood I appropriated from nearby abandoned buildings. Just for shits and giggles, I also put a very much alive tree in full bloom at the top of the church, grafted into the wood so it worked like root extensions into the ground. Chapter 34, Comparison. I made sure to keep the shape of the church the same as it was before, though, since Hestia wanted it to stay that way. As a result, it looked like the church now had a tower at the top of it and had been refurbished but needed a new coat of paint. All in all, I was quite satisfied with my work, since it meant we didn't look like we lived in a condemned building anymore. Can't say I'm a fan of all this wood, but it looks decent enough, I suppose. Hraldar said as he looked over the building from the inside. Well, it was either wood or drop items, and I could only afford one of those in that amount. I said with a shrug, and he laughed. A house made of drop items, HA. That's a level of lavishness that even Ishtar wouldn't be willing to do. He said, thinking I was joking. If you say so. Anyhow, here's the dagger. Be careful with it, as that edge will go through damn near anything it touches, including you. I said as I handed over the simple cloth-wrapped blade over. Hraldar looked doubtful until he went to unwrap it and sliced off the top layer of skin on his finger like it wasn't even there. You weren't joking. That's a terrifyingly sharp blade right there. You didn't trade durability for this sharpness, I hope? He questioned, and I shook my head, which he seemed to accept before putting the blade away carefully and heading out. At the comparison later. A total of 5 people were in the office of the goddess Hephaestus at the moment, with one of them being herself. The others were her best level 1 smith, her captain Tsubaki, Ogun, and Hraldar. On her wooden desk sat 2 blades wrapped in cloth that had been presented to her for comparison. In truth, she felt that no work from someone at this level was worthy of her personally looking at, but Ogun was a friend and she happened to owe him a favor. Well, I suppose we should get this over with, since I still have a bunch of paperwork to do. The forge goddess said from her seat as she picked up the first blade and unwrapped it. It was a Balak-style dagger 7 inches long and with a double-edged blade. She turned it this way and that before flicking the flat of the blade and listening to the sound it made. Good basics and a solid make, but there is a slight weakness in the blade here, probably from a heating issue at one point. This is your work then, Henry? She said, looking at her level 1 smith, who nodded humbly. Bit of warning with that next blade, the blade's razor sharp and sliced off part of my finger here when I unwrapped it in a hurry before. Hraldar warned seriously, and the goddess raised an eyebrow but was more careful than usual as she unwrapped the other blade. This new blade was a single color and gleamed in the light, but she furrowed her brow when she saw all of it. The design was simple but efficient, and at first glance it was perfect. That was the first problem she saw: there were no flaws. When a smith worked a material, there were always minute flaws that were left behind, hammer marks, stress cracks, heat marks, things like that. But there was none of that here, as though this blade had simply never been touched by a hammer or flame of any sort. Next was that it was all one piece. There was no gaps or differentiating places from the blade and handle. If the blade had been from something larger like a dragon tooth or something, she could understand seeing this, yet it was clear that just like her own smith, this was from a minotaur horn. She became serious as she began to try and truly figure out how the blade was made and its properties. Sharpness, durability, balance, she tested each of these things unlike with the first dagger, which made the four watching realize that something was wrong. Who made this? She asked with a serious look at Ogun, who frowned. Is there some sort of foul play involved? He asked, fearing the worse. I have no idea, she said honestly as she looked back at the blade with a conflicted expression. What do you mean? Tsubaki asked, confused at her goddess's words. I mean that as far as I can tell, this blade shouldn't exist. Even when I myself craft something, there is always small flaws that can't be removed from a material or a loss of potential somewhere. This blade doesn't have any of that. It's 100% potential from the horn made manifest without a single flaw anywhere, a perfect object, a paradox. The red-haired goddess said honestly. Are you saying that the person who made this surpassed you? Ogun asked in disbelief. No, despite what I just said, this blade is not much different than this other one existentially speaking. The smith developmental skill, or in my case forging domain, allows a smith to exceed 100% potential by adding effects to our creations. Without seeing an added effect beyond what even I can create, there is no comparison between the two of us, she said honestly. Sounds like that guy might not have been as arrogant as he sounded then, Haraldar said with an odd look. What do you mean? Hephaestus asked curiously. Ah well, he said that when it came to crafting drops he was the best in the city if no added effects were added. We set up this test to humble him a bit actually, kinda backfired from the looks of it, Haraldar said honestly. Sounds like an interesting fella, Tsubaki said with a laugh. I'll owe you another favor if you could work to facilitate a meeting between me and the person who made this blade, with their god preferably, Hephaestus said to Ogun seriously. The dark-skinned god himself had an odd expression at this request though. You may actually have better odds of that than myself, he said honestly. Why? She asked confused. Because he is the first child of Hestia's familia, he said, and the red-haired goddess froze in shock. How in heaven did Tia manage to land a craftsman like this? I mean, she's a good goddess without any doubt, but she is about as adept as a brick at craftsmanship, the goddess said in disbelief. Yeah, about that, the guy himself is kinda an oddball as far as I can tell. He doesn't come across as a craftsman at all, and if anything is more a delver like me or most other adventurers, and don't even get me started on how he fights. That dude's got a mean streak to him even if he likes to hide it behind a friendly personality, Haraldar said honestly. I suppose I should reach out to Tia then so I can meet this child myself, Hephaestus said with a headache. Chapter 35, Research and Relaxing. Normal POV. I was entirely unaware of what was going on at the test due to the blade I gave Haraldar, and even after it was over he never showed up, so I totally forgot about it. Instead I worked on testing my new flames to get a feel for what they were capable of, the answer to which was complicated. See, the first thing I tested was the temperature of the flames by using iron, since I knew how hot it had to be to melt the stuff and how much hotter it had to be to melt it faster than that minimum point. Turning the fire to as hot as I could burn through my energy, pun very intended, at extremely high speeds, but could turn a 3-inch iron nail to slag in about half a second. This meant my hottest was about 1700 or so degrees Celsius. Hot enough that even being near it should make things very uncomfortable, if not downright hostile. That was where things got complicated, as neither Belle or myself could feel anything more than a normal warmth from like a campfire or something similar. In addition to that, my fire couldn't burn me, like at all. Yes, I know you are likely asking how I knew that, and the answer was because I tested it. Don't judge me, this was something important to know. Anyways, I could flare my fire up as hot as I wanted and then stick my hand in it and nothing would happen. I may as well have been putting my hand through air. Another thing I discovered was that my fire needed to be kept away from water at all costs. Not because it acted like a grease fire, but because it ate the water and grew rapidly. Electrolysis is the process of separating oxygen and hydrogen that existed in water, both of which were flammable as all hell. My flames, being the weird shit they are, could apparently skip the whole separation step and burn both of those in their bonded form. In other words, water might as well be gasoline as far as my flame was concerned. The good news was that the water capital floors of the dungeon were going to be a fun experience for me, since I needed to be extra careful not to burn the whole place down. A nifty use for the flames I discovered was that I could condense them before unleashing a violent blast in a single direction with them, that I affectionately refer to as my everything in that direction attack. Why? Because that blast traveled for quite some distance and then the flames started to spread and consume everything. The attack was practically made for killing huge groups at once, and it did not discriminate, hence, everything in that direction. Belle was so jealous, by the way, because it looked awesome and it was effective. Admittedly, I might have gotten carried away as I stood in the blazes laughing like a hyena. Anyway, pyromaniac tendencies aside, I could safely say that my new flames were fantastic as a personal form of magic. According to Mike and Hestia, thankfully the name Hellfire was just a name and not actual hellfire, since that was technically a divine substance and shouldn't be possible to manifest in the mortal realm to begin with. As an added note, Mike said my flames were shit as far as alchemy was concerned, which I suppose is fair considering it ate the flask he tried to experiment with. My flames weren't picky. Other than that, I had gotten to work recreating my weapon with the drops that Tiona had dropped off. I fused the Goliath tooth with an infant dragon fang and a green dragon horn to create a super hard and durable material for the weapon's head that I refined as far as I could before it started taking my entire energy pool for a minuscule improvement. The axe head side was also ridiculously sharp as well, which in addition to its very high weight made it very effective. The handle was made of 3 minotaur horns fused and refined into a single foot long and 1.5 inch wide cylindrical handle with a skull-shaped pommel just because I could. The final weapon weighed easily 2 or 3 times as much as my previous one due to its stupid density, and even with B rank strength I had trouble using it. The effectiveness of each attack, however, was not something to sneeze at. That was a lot of weight moving fairly fast after all, so that was to be expected, I suppose. Spent a couple of days practicing with my weapon before I finally felt confident to head back into the dungeon. Bell, on the other hand, was making astoundingly fast progress, as with his most recent update he was at H rank in all his physical stats but hadn't gotten anywhere with magic, which was to be expected since he lacked any way to use that stat. His foundation was solid though, as he had taken what I had taught him as well as what he figured out from our spars to get a handle on how he wanted to fight. He was actually going in the exact opposite direction from myself, as I wanted to hit the hardest without sacrificing maneuverability, while he traded impact for speed and quantity of attacks. Neither path was wrong, but both ended in different ways given enough time. Mine ended with each strike of mine being a potential death sentence, while his ended with a death by 1,000 cuts type scenario, or as a distraction so a heavy hitter like me can safely move in for the big ticket damage. If it wasn't for my magic not being team friendly, we would probably make a very effective 2-man unit in the dungeon. I had made a bunch of figurines already, which Hestia had moved to selling instead of Jagamericans since they brought in way more profit. They were apparently very popular with the gods and women in the city, to the point that she was sold out mere minutes after she opened in the morning. This meant she got most of the day to do whatever she wanted after that, which tended to be her lazing about at the church or cheering on Bell as he trained. Thanks to this influx of money, we were now eating good food nightly. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end eventually, and Hephaestus finally got a chance to catch Hestia and ask about me. It was odd really, as the redhead was downright flirtatious when she introduced herself. Hestia had apparently told the goddess how my cursed technique worked since they were friends, and now the redhead was trying to poach me to her familia openly. I myself wanted nothing to do with the woman, as the looks she was giving me made me feel like she was moments away from eating me. Chapter 36, Threat and Advertisement. It wasn't exactly lust that her gaze held so much as a desire to possess me like one would covet jewelry or money. Not greed, since she was clearly aware of and thought of me as a person, but about as close as you can get to it. "Ah, come on, I am even willing to personally teach you if you'd only join my familia," the red-headed goddess said as she tried to tempt me for the umpteenth time to join her familia. "And as I've said for the last 3 hours, I am perfectly happy where I am right now," I said, irritated at her persistence. Hestia had argued with the redhead for the first hour or so before understanding that I wasn't going anywhere and just chose to leave me to deal with the forge goddess alone. "But your abilities are wasted here. Hestia can't teach you how to hone your craftsmanship, and I am the best in the entire world at it," she said, trying very hard to convince me. "Look lady, if you don't stop bothering me about this, I will turn your body into a pile of mush," I threatened, finally done being polite. To add extra pressure to my threat, I flared up my flames around my body, causing her to recoil in fear. "It was amusing to watch until now, but you've crossed a line," a voice said, and I moved out of the way as a woman with dark skin and long brown hair landed where I was just standing. She held an unsheathed blade out in front of her at the ready, while Hephaestus quickly stopped her from attacking. "Wait, Tsubaki, he's obviously bluffing. There's no way anyone would actually be insane enough to attack a god," she said seriously. She was right in that I wasn't that crazy, or rather stupid. Attacking the god isn't the issue, but rather the reactions of the rest of the gods after that fact. A mortal willing to attack a god might also be willing to kill one, and that was something the gods won't abide, as it threatens their fun down here, as once they are banished back to heaven they can't come back for at minimum centuries. I attack a god and all the other gods will band together to kill me regardless of the circumstances. Oh, I know that he was bluffing, but I won't just sit back and watch some level 1 bastard threaten you," Tsubaki said with a stern expression. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me, but I just took an unarmed stance while coating my body in flames to act as armor. I was also continuously increasing their density and heat, which had started to cause the air around me to warp and the soil below my feet to melt. Fine. You've made your point and I'll leave you alone now, so please stop the hostility. The goddess said, practically begging at this point. She wasn't the one I was worried about though, and it was only when Tsubaki began to sheath her sword that I dismissed my flames everywhere except my hands that stayed at the ready. TCH. You've got a pair on you all right, but try and remember your place next time, I won't let you go so easily otherwise. She said firmly before leaving with her goddess. It was only after they got very far away that I relaxed and retracted my flames fully, while noting that just that small pissing match cost me nearly 3/4 of my energy. Looks like I need to hurry up and reach the true limit of my stats so I can level up. These flames have monstrous energy consumption rates just like my technique. I thought with a sigh before going back into the church. I didn't get the chance to go dungeon delving the next day as my Ache and Naza showed up super early and very excited. We finished the potion. My Ache said with a wide smile. Oh? How well's it work? I asked, interested in whatever type of deodorant potion they had created. Well, at first we struggled to figure out how to make bodies stop producing smells from them consuming the potion, but that failed to include blood or sweat. Then it came to me, what if instead we made something that you pour over the body to eliminate smells? I even had Neza test it and it worked flawlessly, as I couldn't smell anything even though she was covered in goblin blood. My Ache said excitedly. I chose to ignore the fact that for a level 4 like her she probably had to really try just to get that much blood on her. So what you are saying is that it is ready for sale then? I asked and Naza nodded. Alrighty then, just give me a bit and I'll print up some flyers to advertise it. I said as I headed over to a pile of wood scrap at the side of the church. How exactly are you going to print up flyers? Naza asked, confused. I grinned. Well, paper is created by turning wood to dust before boiling it into a mash to pull out the tannins and then bleaching and molding it into sheets. Using my cursed technique I can do all of that myself in mere moments so long as I have wood on hand, and the best part is I can form the paper with the words already on it, no ink necessary. I said honestly. Your technique is ridiculously useful, I'm envious. Naza said with a smile. I hummed in acknowledgement as I started turning this scrap wood in high-quality posters with fancy designs and everything. The actual advertisement itself was a simple thing in big bold lettering that said a revolutionary new potion created and found only at the Blue Pharmacy. The deodorant potion removes all the smells from one's body after a hard and rough delve. Simple and gets the point across while also catching the eye. Good job, Alex. My Ache praised as he held up one of the posters. Now then, we just need to get these into the hands of the ladies at the hostess and posted on the walls of the streets, and pretty soon you should have your first customers. I'll take the hostess since I already have a business arrangement with them, while you three set them up throughout the city. I said as I passed stacks of posters to Belle, Naza and my Ache while keeping one for myself. We split up after that, and as I said I headed to the hostess and managed to sweet talk Mia into passing out posters to customers in exchange for a week's worth of enhanced ingredients for free. I honestly lost out on that deal, but not by so much. I was willing to make a fuss about it. By the end of the day all of Orario was covered in advertisements. Comment. 12 Comment. Vote. Chapter 37, Developmental Skills and Killing Spree. With that done I called it a day and headed back to the church to try and push my cursed energy through my weapon again, since I really wanted to be able to craft cursed tools due to the sheer versatility of them. A cursed tool creator didn't actually need to be able to personally use a cursed technique in order to make a tool with it attached. While also true that the most common cursed tools are ones that just have cursed energy imbued in them, that was by no means the limit to what was possible. In fact, from my understanding of the subject, that was just the first step in most cases. All it was turning whatever the tool was into a vessel to hold whatever cursed technique was being added to it. From there the manga didn't really give all that many details about how cursed tools are made, other than that the power had something to do with the skill and power of the craftsmen themselves. For example, a third-grade sorcerer couldn't make a special-grade cursed tool without seriously weird circumstances that usually involved a lot of sacrifice and death. Before I could even dream about making a special-grade tool, though, I had to first figure out how to imbue cursed energy into an object permanently. Even after having gotten the enlightenment of Black Flash, I was not making much progress in this regard, as while I could coat an object in cursed energy temporarily, it dissipated rapidly if I stopped. My gut told me that I may in fact actually need to wait until I leveled up to make cursed tools, which kinda sucked. It made sense though, since no one could add effects to equipment without the blacksmith developmental skill, which could be gotten only when leveling up. Developmental skills are different than the normal sort as they are basically buffs given by the fauna upon leveling up that are offered by what you have done in your life up to that point. Blacksmiths tend to get the associated skill, alchemists get mixing, archers get archery and swordsmen get swordsmanship and so on. Developmental skills are categorized in 3 categories: occupational, augmentation and supportive. The first type was skills like archery and blacksmith that you got because of your occupation. The second and third types were slightly more argumentative in nature as to some degree many skills could be counted as one or both. Mystery for example was a skill that usually was counted as augmentation if used by a crafter as it allowed unusual and rare things to be done when used in conjunction with the blacksmith skill. However, if used in conjunction with the mage skill it could be counted as supportive. The difference between augmentation and supportive skills was that the former added an extra layer of depth and complexity to whatever it was applied to. The latter on the other hand merely granted a jump in efficiency and power to what it was applied to. Unlike normal skills, developmental skills also had ranks that grew with the skill, knowledge, and power of the person that had them, though improving the rank of a developmental skill was notoriously hard, with the highest ever recorded only being C rank. The reason for this was actually very well known too. Basically the only way you could get a developmental ability higher than this was if you focused so much on it that all the rest of your other abilities simply atrophy and can't improve anymore. It basically meant sacrificing all else to focus on this one aspect of yourself, and it simply wasn't worth it. Very few things ever actually require a higher developmental ability than that after all. Technically it was speculated that you could also raise a developmental ability by simply pushing what it allowed to the extreme and thus not have to sacrifice all else, but the theorized methods of doing so were self-inflicted torture without a shadow of a doubt. For example, it was theorized that you could raise abnormal resistance by continuously exposing yourself to poison, curses, and debuffs like that in higher and higher potencies. This was a dangerous game though, as if you go even a little too far you could end up dead or worse from one of your doses of your chosen affliction. Like I said though, there was no point in going for higher than C rank unless you were basically left with no choice. I assume that in order to create cursed items I needed either the blacksmith or mystery developmental skills. Looks like it's time to head back into the dungeon and go on a killing spree to max out my magic stat and find out what it is so I can raise my other stats to that point as well. I thought slightly impatiently. After making this decision I spent the rest of the day making figurines while even moving away from humanoid races and onto monsters. I didn't just choose monsters from this world either, but ones from myth, TV, and anime as well. I made one of each goblin, kobold, war shadow, and griffin, with the last being the hardest due to the sheer level of detail I added to each feather. Hestia was surprised to see these monstrous figurines but still thought they were beautiful in their own way and planned to sell them as well. We ate, and the next day I stopped by the hostess and improved the ingredients, got my lunch from Seer, who was rapidly improving with each meal she made, and headed to the dungeon. Once in the dungeon I didn't bother trying to get drops but went straight for breaking the magic stones in the monsters as fast as possible, since I was after that smoke rather than money or drops. I still collected any that appeared alongside the magic stones, but otherwise I didn't care. I had a slight panic attack when I finally stepped onto the 5th floor, since that was where the Minotaur had shown up at, but I managed to calm myself by repeating that was a freak accident multiple times in my head. Frankly speaking, war shadows were by far the easiest monsters for me to kill on this floor, since their stones were right in plain view on their faces. I just needed to hit them with a quick spark of flame on it and they went poof almost immediately. My first encounter with killer ants was unpleasant to say the least, as the F***ers kept running when I'd rapid kill all of them except one somehow, which made that one summon way more. At some point I stopped trying to go melee and just reset the board with a F***ck everything in that direction style flame blast. That turned out to be a poor decision, as the flames didn't kill the ants immediately and spread to the others that came as a result like a perpetual motion machine, until the dungeon clearly decided that was enough of that and stopped sending more ants. That was fine by me though, as I had gotten a FCK ton of liquid from that, almost as much as I got from the Minotaur, in fact, if that tells you how many effing ants showed up. Chapter 38, Getting Close. Even though I wasn't after drops, I still got quite a lot from my massacre of the killer ants, with my bag quickly proving horribly insufficient to hold them all. I sighed at this and decided that I needed a bigger bag, or at the very least one that had a spatially expanded interior so it could carry way more. The little sack I carried at my waist was not bad at all for most level 1 adventurers, but I was not most now, was I? In the end I had little choice but to use my technique to compress a great majority of the ant drops, which was carapaces and pincers in this case, into balls of hard material that were hyper-dense. Even then I barely was able to collect everything, including the stones in my bag. Leaving the dungeon I headed to the guild and dumped all the magic stones in front of Rose. "What on earth happened for you to collect so many stones?" she asked, horrified. I ran into a group of killer ants and everything going fine as I killed them real fast by breaking their stones, but for some f***ing reason the last one would always run away and call more, and well, you should be able to guess how that went. I said, slightly annoyed just remembering it. I see, most level 1 adventurers tend to run away when killer ants start swarming, you know. She said in a chiding tone. I shrugged. I am not most level 1 adventurers. I said casually. Clearly not, but don't go getting a big head and dying because of it, you hear me? She said sternly, and I chuckled but nodded. I got 7,000 and change Valis from this delve even though I didn't turn in any of my drops, mostly because they weren't in a shape that would allow it. I headed to a general store after that and bought a larger backpack for 4,000 Valis before dropping off the food container at the hostess and passing by a super busy blue pharmacy on my way to the church. Like I had expected, business was booming once the first few people came to try this new potion and spread word that it wasn't a hoax. Information moves very fast in this city, so I wasn't surprised that the pharmacy was so busy only a day after they had started selling the thing. I didn't intend to ask for a cut of the profits, since beyond the idea and advertisement I hadn't given any help at all developing the thing. Honestly, I felt for my Ache and Naza as they weren't doing great financially either, as everyone preferred going to Diane Sect for potions even if they were way more expensive. With this new potion though, they should get some fresh blood injected into their familia and more business as well. I didn't doubt that there would be alchemists copying the potion soon enough, but the business was never the reason for me to give them the idea. Frankly speaking, this was a 2 birds with 1 stone type deal, as I was repulsed by the smell of the dungeon square and they got new life injected into their familia and business, a win-win. Obviously there would be a few people who wouldn't bother with the potion, but if even 50% of the daily adventurers coming through the area did, then the stench would decrease dramatically. Belle was diligently practicing in front of the church when I got there, while Hestia was lounging nearby watching. I wasn't all that surprised, since if she could, she was fairly lazy most of the time but could still put in the work if she had to. Good news, bad news time, I said with a smirk as I walked up. What is it this time? Another variant? A minotaur or some other insane thing? Hestia questioned angrily, clearly done with my shenanigans. Oh, now don't be like that, you know just as well as I do that I am growing up big and strong from all of this. I said with a laugh. She looked like a chipmunk when upset as she puffed out her cheeks and stomped her feet if she was standing up. She sighed in despair. Fine, what is it this time? She asked, rubbing her temple like she had a headache, which she probably did. Well, I happened to kill a whole mess of killer ants, so I think it's time for me to update again and hopefully hit the actual limit in my magic stat. That's the good news. Bad news is I am probably going to get sick as hell again after the update. I hope not, but well, my luck's not the best in this regard. I said with a shrug. That's it? I was sorta expecting something insane, but that actually sounds pretty normal. She said, confused. How many killer ants, Alex-san? Belle asked curiously. I don't know, like 100 or so I think, hard to count really since the whole R was on fire. I said casually. Hestia face-palmed. And there it is, one of these times I'll learn to expect this stuff. She said, frustrated. Name, Alexander Drake. Race, human. Level 1+, kin level up. Strength 745, B-927, S. Endurance 863, A-1036, SS. Agility 714, B-859, A. Dexterity 697, C-801, A. Magic 2270, X-3000. Spells, Hell's Forge. Innate technique, can use anything from a living being and reshape or refine it per one's will. Incantation, Hell's Forge. Extension, Hellfire. Skills, Heavenly Restriction. In exchange for the ability to wield mana and magic, one gains access to cursed energy and cursed techniques. Blessing of Black, permanently increases cursed energy efficiency, amount, and control. Magic will always start at G rank after leveling up. So that's what the true limit is. It doesn't even have a lettered rank but this odd symbol. I said, glossing over the rest of my stats. What I didn't say was that I could feel the fact that this was the limit, as my body felt bloated and strained right after the update. It wasn't a full body bloat either, but more along the lines of having overeaten by a bit and the food having expanded in your stomach. Uncomfortable but manageable nonetheless. Knowing what the true limit was, I now needed to raise my other stats to it before leveling up immediately or risk my vessel exploding. It was going to be hellishly risky on my part, as the closer I get to the limit in each stats, the more strain my vessel will be under trying to contain this power it has no mortal business holding. Knowing this, I was fairly certain that my next update would be my final one in level 1. I won't lie and say I'm not nervous about that thought, since as far as I know I am likely the first person to ever level up at truly maxed stats, not to mention whatever effect my cursed energy might have on this process. Chapter 39, Existential Crisis. I wasn't stupid enough not to recognize how unique my situation was. I was only able to reach the true limit because of my uniqueness. But logic said that I pay a high price for these benefits, and that scared me. One might look at my skills and cursed technique and you see all the benefits but ignore the cost of them. My first skill, for example, means that I don't have mana and can't use magic. I've seen enough anime and read enough books to know that mana was a superior energy type, and I traded that for something worse. Cursed energy and techniques were ultimately limited in what they allowed, even if they appear overwhelmingly better than mana and magic at first glance. Take my cursed technique for example, that has so many uses that it could make anyone in the world jealous. The essence of my technique though was that I could refine and transform anything from a living source. That last bit was a heavy restriction for a craftsman. There are many things that I can't use my technique on, so instead I need to work extra hard to close the gap with the things I can use it on. The existence of the dungeon that is alive is the only reason my cursed technique is so valuable, as without it, like if I was on Earth, my technique would be way more difficult to do anything meaningful with. Even further, I had to learn everything I knew about cursed energy from what I had from the manga, compared to the mages of this world that had thousands of years of research and experimentation to perfect what they knew of mana. Can you even begin to imagine the sheer handicap that put me at? I almost died just to discover that as a lower form of energy, mana potions are several times more effective on cursed energy compared to mana. Then there was the need to make breakthroughs in how I used cursed energy and my technique that normal adventurers don't need to do. Mana and magic in this world functioned in such a way that purely training is pretty much all anyone needs to succeed at it. Cursed energy isn't like that. I need to suffer intense experiences in order to grow. Then you might ask about advanced curse techniques like domain expansion and reverse curse technique, and I can say for certain that I have no idea. The manga's information on how those work exactly was vague as shit beyond negative, and negative cursed energy made positive, and that domains were an expansion and manifestation of one's innate technique. You see the sheer amount of nothing that tells me? How does 2 negative make a positive? What the *ck does expanding and manifesting a technique even mean? All these details that a mage in this world would know as a matter of course for mana are things I have to figure out on my own. I know I make it seem like it's easy, but the truth of the matter is that I'm flying by the seat of my pants here and just hoping to whatever being will listen that I don't implode. The funny thing is that what terrifies me the most is one way I can think of as obvious to improve my own stats: self-refinement. I could totally use my technique on myself to improve my body and by extension stats, but I am scared to try. I have no idea what that may do to me. Will I stop being human? Will I become a curse hybrid or full-blown cursed spirit? I have no idea at all, and that alone terrifies me into avoiding it at all cost. What has me just as nervous is that I have no idea how leveling up will affect me, since I don't have mana. When a normal adventurer levels up, their vessel is expanded and refined in a metaphysical sense, but otherwise they are the same race as before, since mana was already just as much a part of their existence as anything else. Them getting closer to their mana didn't affect them at all, but cursed energy was not the same at all. If when I level up my existence becomes closer to cursed energy, I may lose part of my humanity in the process. At some point I will end up more cursed than human if that happens, and I have no idea how that might affect me. I might be the same as always, just different racially, or I might turn out like all other curses that are evil things that are better off destroyed. My only hope was the innate traits of the fauna itself that responds to the emotions and desires of the person it is attached to. I don't want to lose what makes me me, even if that meant I would gain much more power. I desire godhood, but not as some sort of evil deity manifested through cursed energy. I hope with all that I am that the fauna picks up on my will and desires when I level up and offers me a way forward, as it has with so many other adventurers who have put in the effort to achieve their dreams. I seem to have gotten rather sidetracked now, haven't I? Where was I? Alright, well, after determining that my next update would likely be the last before I leveled up, I began pushing my physical abilities after each trip to the dungeon over the next few days. While I was doing that, Bell had reached G in all of his physical stats, which meant that it was finally time for him to go delving himself. Honestly, I wasn't worried all that much, as his new armor made from the hides I collected and the refined carapaces and pincers of the ants meant unless he got way over his head, nothing on the first 4 floors should be able to kill him unless it was a variant. In addition, I made sure that his weapons and armor didn't stand out as anything valuable, even if they were, so nobody should get any funny ideas about killing him for his gear. Yes, that was a very real possibility in the dungeon, as some adventurers made their fortunes by robbing and sometimes even killing weaker adventurers. It was usually reserved for further into the dungeon though, so he should be fine. As I discovered, limit sickness only applies the first time you break your vessel's current limit in some regard. After all, something that is broken can never be unbroken, as even repairing the thing doesn't remove the fact it had been broken. Still, I avoided using my cursed energy since I wanted my next update to send all that smoke to my physical stats to get them to the limit. In this regard, the dungeon had been oh so helpful, as I hadn't ran into a single ant even after reaching the 7th floor, as if the place was making them avoid me, which made sense considering the last time. Chapter 40, Stockpiling. What the dungeon wanted was widely accepted to be nothing short of killing all the gods and people on the surface, and this meant that any adventurer who delved was a target. Most of the time the dungeon followed a tried and true methodology and rule set when dealing with adventurers, but for select few scenarios it was understood that the dungeon might even go out of its way to bend some of these rules. One such rule that was broken was if the dungeon determined that a monster was too helpful for an adventurer and thus prevented them from meeting them. This could be overcome, of course, if you were stubborn enough about what you were after, since the dungeon still had to deal with other adventurers likely on the same floor, but for casual delving like mine that wasn't something I was after. Last time I had harvested close to 100 or so ants, so the dungeon had decided that I shouldn't get that opportunity again. I didn't have any issue at all with that, since just by going deeper I could go for quality rather than quantity of smoke. The 8th to 9th floor had another decor change as the size of the rooms began to get bigger and the ceilings taller while moss grew along the walls. There were no new monsters on these floors, but the ones from the previous floors appeared stronger here. Everything got faster and hit harder while also getting slightly smarter in how they fought. My stats were almost equal to a weak level 2 at the moment, except in magic, but since I wasn't using that at the moment it didn't matter. These were still level 1 monsters though, so I had little issue smashing through them. Floor 10 was where things got tricky for me, as needle rabbits, orcs, imps, and bad bats all start appearing and were all classified as high level 1 monsters that a normal level 1 needed at least B rank across the board to even attempt to fight. Needle rabbits were, as the name implied, rabbits with sharp horns on their head. They are fast and hard to spot in the misty terrain of the floor as they are white in color. Orcs were the first large class monster to appear in the dungeon, standing over 10 feet tall and being fat green-skinned humanoid creatures with pig snouts, tusks, and ears. They also used uprooted trees as weapons, so obviously you don't need to be told what getting hit straight on by them might do to you. Imps were small thin red-skinned humanoid demon creatures with small bat wings and a single sharp horn of their perpetually grinning heads. They were also known as dungeon thieves, since they had a habit of trying to snatch bags or loosely held weapons while the adventurers were distracted. Finally, there were the bad bats that were just really annoying bats that swooped down randomly to cause problems since they stayed on the ceiling otherwise. None of these were a problem individually, but the issue was that monsters never spawned alone on this and the next floors, but rather in groups. Each group was also never smaller than 3 monsters, so I had to stay on my toes on this floor. Orcs proved the most troublesome, as their tall heights and long-reaching weapons meant that I couldn't easily smash their skulls and be done with it. Those swung trees moved alarmingly fast, and when there was more than one coming at you it was hard to do anything beyond dodge constantly. I eventually got used to the way things operated on this floor and got my first kills on these orcs when they overextended their swings and left their kneecaps open briefly. Crack! The sound of my blunt end snapping the bones in the left leg of my target was music to my ears as I dodged the falling monster and his friend's swings. Quickly dashing behind it, I brought my weapon down on its head that was now within reach and left that orc dead. Monsters were ruthless though, and the 2 remaining orcs swung their weapon into the corpse, trying to get me in the process, but I had already moved out of the way, having expected it. The corpse exploded into smoke that got sucked into my tattoos as the heavy strikes crushed the magic stone. Using that brief window, I dashed to the next orc and swung the sharp end of my weapon across the right knee of the second orc, cutting through it like butter. My new weapon was badass and these monsters didn't stand a chance against it. Blood sprayed out of the wound and the orc roared in pain for a moment before its friend struck it with its tree, trying to hit me and only completely crippling the orc instead. Movement is key in the dungeon, a fact I had learned and made sure I implemented constantly. If you stand still for more than a moment you become vulnerable to attacks. The final orc was dispatched shortly after that, and I got to harvesting my spoils while maintaining my vigilance. This floor and the 2 after it were well known as the place that most robberies happened, and I preferred not getting taken by surprise. Reason being that these floors were deep enough that adventurers were now worth robbing, and that the constant mist made it easy to set up ambushes. Add these things together and well, you can figure out why it's not recommended to come here alone. To be fair though, it's not recommended to delve alone either, but people still do that, so it is what it is. I myself was a poor target for robbing as I didn't wear armor and was constantly vigilant. Not to mention, after watching me dismantle orcs without getting even a little winded, showed I wasn't some soft target that wouldn't fight back. So while I wasn't concerned about getting robbed, I was still paranoid enough not to take that for granted. I hunted down another set of orcs and some needle rabbits that decided today was a good day to die as well before calling it for the day. I earned 13,000 valis from my loot, which showed that the deeper you went the more valuable loot was. Rose was a little upset at me for going that deep alone, but after I showed her that I was without anything more than a few cuts and bruises from near misses and dodges, she left it at scolding me for my recklessness. I loved how walking through the dungeon square no longer smelled of blood, sweat, and other unpleasantness thanks to the new potions that had taken the city by storm. The potions worked so well and were so popular that even Ishtar had commissioned perfumed and airborne versions that she used in her brothels to remove that particular stench from them without burning an ungodly amount of stupidly strong incense. I only know this because Naza complained to me about it when I went to drop off my vials and get more potions.
Thanks for listening.